A mom takes her 2 kids out on a quiet Alaska boat ride until 4 strange shapes break the surface and start swimming straight for them. What she pulls out of that freezing water will leave you speechless. Watch till the end to see what those creatures really were. Carol Bowen had been running her boat up and down Frederick Sound for almost 20 years. But that Saturday in September, the only passengers on the Patience were her own kids, and neither of them had wanted to come. 40 minutes, she'd told Eli the night before. We'll run down past the Five Fingers, look for whales, and be back before the game starts. Eli, 15 and allergic to anything that pulled him away from his phone, had grunted something that wasn't quite a yes. Mabel, 10, and incapable of saying no to anything involving binoculars, had been dressed and waiting by the truck before Carol finished her coffee. It had been a hard year. Carol's husband, Daniel, had taken a job in Anchorage back in March, and what was supposed to be temporary had turned into separate addresses and a lawyer in Juneau. Eli blamed his mother for the move, the town, all of it, though he'd never said so directly. He'd just stopped talking mostly, except to point out when she'd done something wrong. The morning was the kind Southeast Alaska does well in September. Low gray ceiling, water like hammered pewter, diesel and low tide mixing in the cold air. Carol idled the Patience down past the Five Finger Islands, where the old lighthouse, the first one ever built in Alaska, back in 1902, still stood watch over a stretch of water locals knew to respect. The tide ran hard through there, 4 or 5 knots some days, fast enough to push a swimming animal sideways before it ever felt the current pulling. Mabel had her GoPro out, narrating to nobody in particular for the Nature channel she ran with 11 subscribers, when she stopped mid-sentence. Mom, there's something in the water." Carol throttled back. 4 dark shapes were strung out across the surface a few hundred yards off the bow, bobbing in a strange, labored way that didn't match anything she knew. Not seals. Seals dove, vanished, came up somewhere else entirely. These things stayed up, heads tipped back, like they were fighting just to keep their noses above the swell. Otters? Mabel guessed, though even she didn't sound sure. Eli, for the first time all morning, put his phone down and came to the rail. He didn't say anything. He just looked. Carol grabbed the binoculars off the dash and found them. 4 heads, ears laid flat and soaked dark, eyes white-rimmed with panic. Deer. Young ones by the size of them, what hunters in that country called buttonbucks, antlers barely more than nubs. "They're not supposed to be out here," she said, half to herself. Sitka black-tailed deer swam between islands all the time, one of the strange, ordinary facts of living in the Alexander Archipelago, where solid ground is rarely more than a few miles off. But this wasn't a short hop between beaches. This was the middle of Frederick Sound, inside a tide rip that had put boats up on the rocks before, and the water that time of year sat around 48 degrees. A deer can lose the strength in its legs in well under an hour in water that cold. These 4 looked like they'd already used most of it. "We have to help them," Mabel said, already moving toward the stern. Carol hesitated. Going in for them meant crossing into that rip with a boat that drew more water than she liked at low tide, invisibility getting worse instead of better. But she watched one of the deer go under for a second too long before its head broke back through, and she pushed the throttle forward. "Eli, grab the cargo net off the stern rail. Mabel, every towel in that cabin now." What none of them expected was for the deer to swim toward the boat. Wild animals don't do that. They'd all grown up around deer that bolted at the snap of a twig, and yet these 4 turned, as a group, and started paddling straight for the Patience like it was the only solid thing left in the world. The first one came alongside, gasping, sides heaving, and Carol leaned over the rail with the net while Eli gripped her belt to keep her from going in after it. The deer was heavier than it looked, all soaked muscle and bone, and by the time they wrestled it over the rail, it simply folded onto the deck, legs giving out, breath rattling in its chest. "It's not even fighting us," Eli said, and there was something in his voice Carol hadn't heard in months. Not anger, just plain astonishment. The second and third deer came easier, past the point of struggle. But the fourth, smallest of the four, kept drifting just out of reach of the net, swept by the current toward the rocks below the lighthouse. Carol throttled forward to close the gap, and that was when Eli, without being asked, climbed halfway over the rail himself, one hand locked on a cleat, the other stretched out over the water. It mattered what he did next, more than he probably understood in the moment. Eli had nearly drowned at 8 years old, pulled under at a lake outside Wasilla, while his father looked away for 30 seconds too long, and the fear of deep water had quietly shaped every choice he'd made near it since. The skipped swim lessons, the refusal to come out on the boat most weekends. Carol had spent 2 years trying to coax him back toward water without once succeeding. He got a fistful of wet hide and held on while Carol grabbed the net, and together they hauled the last deer up, both of them soaked to the shoulder, the boat rocking hard under the swell. All four lay steaming faintly on the cold deck, while Mabel covered them with every towel and jacket aboard, and Carol turned the patients south, away from the rip, toward a gravel beach on the Kupreanof side, where the water ran calm and shallow. It took the better part of an hour to get there. By the time the bow scraped gravel, 3 of the deer had already lifted their heads, ears twitching, legs starting to find their own weight again. Carol dropped the ramp, and the first one stood, wobbled, then bolted straight up the beach into the hemlock without a backward glance. 2 more followed close behind. The smallest one couldn't stand. It tried twice and folded both times, and Eli, still soaked, still shivering himself, sat down on the gravel beside it and rested a hand on its shoulder, the way you'd settle a spooked horse, saying nothing at all. On the 4th try, the deer got its legs under it and held on. It took 1 step, then another, and at the tree line it stopped and looked back for just a second before disappearing into the brush. Eli stayed sitting on the wet gravel a long moment after it was gone. Carol didn't say anything either. She just sat down next to her son on the cold beach, and for the first time in almost a year, he leaned into her shoulder instead of away from it. Mabel got the whole thing on the GoPro, shaky and half out of focus, the kind of footage that would never win any prizes. It's still saved on an old hard drive back in Petersburg, labeled simply, "The Day the Deer Swam to Us." If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more incredible animal stories.